Welcome back, everyone. My name's Hattie. If you haven't been here already, if you have, welcome back. So nice to have you here listening. Today is an episode with me on my own, speaking to Kathryn Williams, who is a flautist and also the co-author of the ISM's recent study, Dignity at Work 2. We speak about the impact of the study on Kathryn, how she processed all the information, any surprises that came up through looking over the information, what the key findings were, and then we also go on to have the most brilliant discussion, and Kathryn shares some really moving details about her life as a single parent while she was also studying for her Masters at the Royal Northern College of Music. It really highlights some of the realities of musicians that maybe we don't consider, and Kathryn is really honest about the ways in which she tried to hide the struggle she was going through. So yeah, I'm really thrilled to be presenting this episode for you today, and huge thank you to Kathryn. It's taken us a bit of a while to get this out. Context being that I think it was like the 12th of December when we recorded this, because I remember it had been that day that snowed, or maybe it was, I think it was the 12th of December. So oopsie, 1, 2, miss a few, and all these months have gone past, but I don't think it matters because this conversation is so brilliant and she is a wonderful speaker. So yes, I hand over to my chat far too long ago with Kathryn Williams. So, Kathryn, thank you so much for joining me today over the beautiful Zoom, which feels like we haven't done this for a while, actually. I've forgotten how to work everything, but how are you?
I'm okay, thank you very much. I am zooming you from the rolling ice-topped hills of Rossendale. I think we
Oh,
have very different views of the world right now.
yeah.
I'm
Yeah,
assuming.
I have some ice-topped South London houses though, which has been
Okay,
pretty
that's
beautiful this
charming as
morning.
well.
I know. Thank you so much for coming to talk, and in what I know is quite a busy time anyway, with the addition of you being pregnant and also having a lot on with this report and everything. But
Anytime, Hattie.
can you let us know, your elevator pitch about yourself? No pressure
Elevator
though.
pitch. Oh no. Oh well, I'm a versatile flute player, recording artist, and researcher.
Oh,
There you go.
you do sound so cool. Oh my God. Keep going, keep going.
Thanks. A bit more up to the next floor. I am a freelance flute player and have been for the past 11 years or so. Studied at the Royal Northern College of Music. Just to satisfy your listeners' curiosity, where is her accent from? Which can't seem to get away from.
Mm.
It is a transatlantic accent. I moved here from Ohio
Oh
16 years ago.
my
So I'm
gosh.
nearly to the halfway point where I've lived longer here than I did there, which is a crazy thought. Thought I would just finish up an undergrad degree and then go back, and here I still am. I
Wow.
gathered three degrees from the RNCM. Yeah, I got really into like contemporary music there, and that's a really big part of my work is collaborative composition and new music and commissioning pieces. So I just like to do a bit of everything, really, a bit of orchestra stuff when someone's ill enough to call me.
Oh gosh, which is quite
But
a lot.
yeah, you never know. It's always pretty last minute. But and then the research stuff came out of doing a PhD at Huddersfield University, which I finished 2 years ago, and that was on the visibility of breathing. It stemmed from a project where I commissioned over 100 pieces that are limited to a single breath, which was a way to focus both the composer's work and me as a performer as is something that we don't often think about, is what the performer's body is doing behind the instrument, what limitations they might have. And it was started because I had a really bad time with my sinuses for a number of years. It meant I couldn't actually breathe through my nose at all, completely blocked, and I have severe asthma. So I had to find all kinds of funny ways to play the flute, because at the same time I was a single parent to a toddler, so the pressure was on to make it work somehow. I did find some ways to build up work, which was a lot of that was doing live music now and going into really fun settings, like museums and hospitals and prisons, with my flute or a little trolley of instruments.
Dressing up as a flute as well.
Dressing up as a flute, which I've got a little early years show now, where I get to wear a full body flute costume, which is just my dream.
You do have to go on, I think it's on Twitter. Or is there a picture of it on Instagram?
Yeah, I think
It's
both.
absolutely hilarious. What was the longest commissioned piece for one breath?
So the longest that I have to sustain a single breath is 2 minutes and 20 seconds or thereabouts. It's the hardest one.
Wow.
By far. It's very difficult.
Did you make it all the way through?
Yeah.
Wowza.
Yeah, but I obviously that's still not very long for like a concert. It's 2 minutes and 20 seconds. So like if I'm doing a concert where I have to play like 60 or more of these pieces in one little go, I've got to be very careful how I program them. Yeah. So I would do the 2.5 minute one, and then I have a piece that like is a film, so then I can have a little break to regain. The shortest one is like 2 seconds.
Whoever wrote that, angel.
Yeah, totally.
So, coming back to the work you're doing at the moment with the ISM, can you talk us through like why they got you on board and sort of the research?
So the research I was doing was all about breathing and the environment and that kind of thing. And that twinned perfectly with a Twitter call out that came out at the very start of lockdown by the ISM, saying they were looking for a PhD researcher to do a global literature review on aerosol transmission. And I thought, well, I'm into air and I'm researching. I've got an institutional login. So very grateful to have gotten that work. So that ended up being 2 global literature reviews that they published 2020. A few months later, I came on board with them as a freelancer to do all of their like Brexit research, because that was at the time of the free trade agreement and all that stuff happening over Christmas 2020. And then I had a baby, and then this job came up, which is a research and policy officer in equality, diversity, and inclusion, which is brilliant for me because it's from home and it's flexible, and I can still do a bit my freelancing, and it's super interesting. So I'm really enjoying it. I started that back in March. And Deborah, the CEO, told me that my first job would be to revisit the dignity at work research that they undertook in 2018. Their plan was always to do a survey and a report again 4 years later to see if there'd been any cultural change since that report came out. So in 2017, in the wake of the Me Too movement, they began to receive a lot of calls from predominantly female members wanting to talk about things that had happened to them at work. And that year, the legal team at the ISM saw a tripling of cases that were to do with workplace discrimination.
Wow.
So that led to this two surveys that they did. One was a workplace survey, so similar to the one that just happened, trying to investigate how widespread is this problem. And it's something that we all kind of, as musicians, we might say, oh yeah, it's terrible. Everyone I know has had a problem. But you need the research and you need the data to back it all up and actually make a meaningful campaign off the back of it. They did a survey around higher education institutions that was including music, dance, and drama. So that was called Dignity in Study.
Mm.
Fairly unsurprisingly, it found that this was a widespread problem. Um, that was pretty much just as bad in training as it was in the profession. So
So,
that, yes, that was my job 4 years later, is to design the survey and get as many responses as possible, which we got 660 in about a 5 week period, which I think is really good.
mm.
And then spend the summer analyzing it.
Yeah, I'm really interested because we spoke first just before, well, whilst the survey was out and people were responding and you were kind of waiting for all the data and everything to come back.
Mm-hmm.
How was that process of, the survey closing and just having all of this data to go through and everything? How was that process? Like, how did you go about looking through it all and writing it up?
Yeah, I think I had to take quite a measured approach because there was so much to go through. And there's also so many different ways of looking at it, of filtering through the results. And so I took a few weeks just reading through everything and then trying to sort of work out some rough categories of what was coming through.
Mm.
So there were 660 like usable responses, and but we also had several open comment boxes where people could choose to share more information about what happened, or about the workplace scenario where it happened, or any other context that they wanted to share, and it was all anonymous. And there were like well over 1,000 comments for that, so there was a
That's a
lot to go
lot.
through. I used a lot of paper. I just couldn't do it all on a screen, so I
Mm.
printed it all out. So I loved the feel of it, and different different piles of paper, many different highlighter colors, and a spreadsheet to start putting things in. But also, like I said, I was working from home, so my only
Mm.
contact with other people who knew what I was doing, like at work, was maybe once a week or every couple of weeks. I was grateful that we had got a puppy at around the same time. That was
Oh,
really comforting, because you can't work with data like that and not be affected by it. So I had
yeah.
to make sure that I was sort of taking breaks regularly and chatting with my family about it and stuff like that.
Hmm. And I mean, we're going to probably go on a bit to talk about your experience, as a, I mean, discrimination in the freelance world and as a flautist and everything. But how did it feel? I guess it makes sense to be printing these things out because it is someone's experience, and to have it on a screen is quite faceless, I guess. So, like, I think that makes sense. Like, I can imagine myself wanting to do the same thing. But was there something that particularly stood out to you or moved you the most in what you read from these responses?
Yeah, a lot of the themes were just, well, mainly from women who came through as experiencing 78% of the discrimination described in the report. It just kind of all gathered as like one kind of, in my head when I was reading it, I could hear like lots of women's voices saying these things at the same
Oh,
time. It was like
wow. Yeah.
quite quite a full experience, actually. I think everyone has their own experience of reading to themselves or reading aloud, where sometimes you can hear it in your head, or I mean, that's what I experienced. I can hear a
Yeah.
voice in
Yeah.
my head when I'm reading. And to me, the voice was just like a lot of women saying, you know, I'm never going to get booked again. I'm being pregnant was amazing, but it meant I'm never going to have the same career, or I was told I shouldn't do this, or what I found was all these women's voices just getting smaller and smaller and smaller through these comments of
Mm.
like, oh, I shouldn't dress like that, but I've told I don't want to dress like that, but I've told if I don't, then I won't be booked. All these different ways of controlling what they want to do, which is just play music or work in a studio, or work in publishing, or anything like that. It's just all these different ways that people are unable to pursue the career that they want,
Mm.
or feel safe within their career.
Because I suppose to a certain extent, you could have anticipated the response. It's
Yeah.
not a huge surprise in some ways, but was there an element to the survey that was a surprise to you when you were reading or from the data that you received?
Yeah, I think there are a few things like I've been a freelancer for a long time. I've experienced things. I know a lot of people who have. In all the work I've ever done in 11 years, I've never received one policy document that outlines the organization's policy on or stance on sexual harassment in the workplace, or what to do if you feel you've been treated badly while working for us. Never, nothing. So not that surprised, but if you actually put it into the numbers, 94% of freelancers who experience discrimination, there was no one to go to, or there's no clear guidance of what to do. I mean, just I think putting numbers on the things that you feel like you know already is very, very powerful. But then also people who did report officially, who were perhaps in more traditional employment, the majority of them still had no action taken. Really? Only 10% had a settlement at the end of the, because really that's what's going to happen. Like, we're talking about legality, and we're talking about settlements. That's what all this stuff can lead to, is maybe an apology, hopefully a cultural change. It's going through the legal system and getting a settlement, which is still not enough to recover from discrimination, which is why I thought it's really important to talk about the more personal recovery from experiencing things like that.
What does it mean now going forward to have a number behind that? To be able to say this is the issue, it's huge. How do you take that forward now, knowing that sort of data?
So the data fed into the recommendations that we've made. There's two sets. There's one set for the government, and then there's a set for the music sector. And the thing about freelancers, it goes into both sets. So freelancers are so vulnerable. The gaps in legislation that mean that they often don't have any legal protections, or it's very murky whether they're classed as a worker or purely self-employed. There's also no protections currently around third-party harassment, although there is a new bill that might be coming into law next year, which would be very exciting. Yeah, so with the government, we're lobbying to amend the Equality Act to clearly define freelancers or workers. There's been recommendations made by the Women and Equality Select Committee back in 2018, and these haven't been implemented yet. And that includes a mandatory preventative duty on employers. The thing is, they use the word employee, so it's very confusing, although the word employee technically does mean worker. So if you're, say, contracted personally to do the work, then you're a worker. But often organizations don't quite understand what their obligations are. So we're hoping that these recommendations actually get some proper parliamentary time and attention. But then for the sector, there's a lot that can be done, like, immediately. Policies that get sent to everybody, whether they're employed or self-employed, coming in for a 3-hour session, a one-off, or if they're in every week. And we can really look to other sectors who are doing really good work on making policies. There's the Fawcett Society that have a sexual harassment in the workplace toolkit. And there's also UK Hospitality, which has a lot of similarities, I think, with the music industry, in that it's quite client facing and it's casual and it's on quite late hours and things. But they've got a template where you can make your own policy. And what I did in the report was just simply swap a few words out in the example. Just say orchestra or rehearsal or concert instead of the words in the hospitality sector document. And it actually works really well. Let's say one of your friends gets an Arts Council grant, which is even more impressive than ever. Haha. Which means that they can then hire freelancers to do whatever project it is that they've been awarded this money for. There's nothing in place for those people who are like the secondary recipients of this money. So if they're not being paid on time or the workplace isn't feeling safe, there's no one for them to go to with the funder. So we're trying to encourage some discussion around how some protections can be put in place in grant award agreements, because we were just talking about the vulnerability of the majority freelance who work in the music sector. Well, why are they so vulnerable? There's a lack of legislation that protects them. They might not understand their rights. The organizations who pay them to do some work don't understand their obligations. But also, it's such a closed world. If you get known as the one who complains, you're not going to get asked back, and there's nothing protecting you from victimization. You're not owed anything. And you think about the level of anxiety if you get asked, say, into an orchestra for the first time. Oh my God, am I meant to offer to pay for the teas? Do I have to go for a beer? I don't like drinking. Am I talking too much, too little? Am I too friendly? Oh, and then you have to play your part perfectly, obviously. Like, that's almost the easiest part. I always find the social bit of that just so stressful. And then if you've done well enough, you get another booking. But also, someone might not be ill for a couple of years. They might not need you. There's no way, and heaven forbid something happens where you feel very awkward or even worse. You have someone says some inappropriate things to you based on what you're wearing or something like that. You're gonna go and tell the fixer. It's just making more work for them. They just wanna. Everyone just wants to do their job and go home.
In terms of you writing this report as a freelancer, with an understanding of what it means and like what this whole life entails and the potential discrimination you can come up against, can you talk about maybe how your own experiences align with what you found in the report, or maybe some of the discrimination that you experienced yourself?
Maybe compared to a good number of the comments that we had, I feel like I've come out somehow as luckier than others, in that the more sinister things I've experienced in my life, they haven't been at work. So although I have had some pretty horrendous things happen, they're not really things that I attach to going out and freelancing. There have been things like text messages, like during work, from people in the same workplace who are in a position of, have a full-time position, and I would just leave it. You just sort of, it's annoying, but what do you do? And things like being mansplained to, or perhaps not being seen as someone with the authority that I know that I do actually have. It's not just about what I've experienced; it's what you've if you've witnessed things happening and weren't sure what to do. That's another part of all of this, I think, as well.
In terms of, as well, I think a big part of what we see, or maybe what's not discussed enough, is becoming a parent as a musician as well. And I remember you speaking about, was it your master's that you were pregnant whilst you were studying? Was it your master's or your undergrad?
Well, I had a baby between my undergrad and my master's, and I started the master's when my daughter was 1.
Okay.
On my own, totally on my own.
Many younger people might not understand the commitment that takes, and also then there's this added thing of, I'm hearing a lot of people not being booked because they're not taken seriously because they're pregnant. Can you talk about you know, facing that as a parent, and out of the report, maybe anything that you think could protect parents specifically or
Mm.
pregnant people?
It was 11 years ago. I feel like things have changed a lot since then. There's a lot more dialogue going on about how to support young parents. But I was 23. My family was in the States. I was in a very tricky personal situation where I couldn't just take her home and maybe, get support from my family and start my career in the States. I had to stay here. And also, like, I look back and I think, how the hell did I do that? I don't know. I just took out huge American student loans that I'll probably never pay back so that we could live somewhere. And I was told right away, the biggest impression I had about how to actually start working as a parent was I was trying to explain that I had just moved back to Manchester with my daughter, and I hadn't found a nursery yet or any like babysitters yet, but I was working on it. And I was asked to do this like weekend long orchestral project at college, and I was like, "Oh, can I maybe do the next one? I don't want to know what your problems are. You just have to say yes and turn up."
Yeah.
So that's just basically what I tried doing. Is I tried to make it look very easy. Try not to complain. I said yes to everything. Actually, a lot of singers at college signed up to want to babysit, so I could like afford a few pounds an hour, like so I could go to lectures. And so my daughter was like so fabulous, like strutting down the refectory, the Northern, with these amazing, like lovely students who just wanted to hang out with her for a few hours,
Oh,
and that was
wow.
really nice. And then did find a nursery, but it's not just about the nursery hours because our rehearsals are like
Well,
till 5:30, but pickup is at 5, and then there's a concert at 7:30, which is
mm,
bedtime. So who can do bedtime? What babysitter can cook? Do I need to get a ready meal, or
mm,
or can I trust this person to use the microwave? That's something that was very, very hard because it was just me. There's no one else helping me
yeah.
vet, childcare. And luckily there weren't too many like situations, but definitely felt a lot of guilt and uncertainty. Like, have I made the right choice? I feel like I'm too little to be doing all this.
Mm,
It's just me. I don't know. Just juggling, I suppose, but also that feeling that I had to make it all look pretty effortless. Like I see people
mm,
now who said, "Gosh, you always seemed so happy when you brought your daughter into college." Like
mm.
childcare fell through, and I wanted to audition for a young artist program, and I had to like beg someone to sit with her so I could just go and play. But by then, like I was just so stressed, like I was just playing and like trying not to cry. Like, it's fine, it's fine. I'm just gonna try and play my flute.
Mm.
If there are any young parents out there who need some advice, there's a lot more out there. There's the PiPA campaign, the Parents in Performing Arts, who
Mm.
have recently released a really great research report that again quantifies how parents are often and carers are penalized for their caring responsibilities.
In terms of that being, I guess, discrimination and coming into the report, you know, is there anything sort of legislatively?
Unfortunately, not, because I've had to learn like discrimination is actually an umbrella term for
Mm.
harassment, direct discrimination, indirect discrimination. Actually, maybe it was indirect discrimination. That's like policies or ways of working that end up discriminating against you for under the 9 protected characteristics of the Equality Act. So that could be age, disability, gender reassignment, pregnancy, maternity. But the pregnancy, maternity only goes up to, I think, is it 26 weeks
Oh, I
uh, after
see.
having a baby. So for me, having a 1-year-old and being discriminated against by various working practices. I don't think there's really much I could do. It's just
Yeah,
not fair,
no.
it's just not cool, but I don't think there's much more I could have done.
Yeah, I think there's just a kind of expectation that if you're in that situation, there must be a partner to take care of your child, or there must be a parent, a grandparent there, just seamlessly able to slot into your life. But it's like,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
not the
Just being asked
reality.
things like that, like, well, can't she just go to her dad? It's like, no.
Yeah.
During the masters, my mum did come over once per year
Okay.
for 2 or 3 weeks when I had like a particularly busy time. So she would just um, cook, clean, do the nursery run. Oh my God, the amount of progress I made in 2 weeks was like my
Oh,
whole
wow.
year of progress. I could wake up and go practice in the morning
Hmm.
and come home and there'd be food. I wouldn't have to go and,
Get
worry
someone up.
about, oh, nappies,
Yeah.
wipes, snacks, play dates, all these things. The progress would just zoom up, and then of course that's when I was really getting ill with the sinuses, which had a lot to do with the stress as well, I think, and I even got hospitalized for
Hmm.
viral meningitis. So my first nights away from my daughter were because I was hospitalized for being so stressed.
It's really important, I think, as well, for me to hear as someone, who doesn't have caring responsibility. You kind of you take it for granted so easily how many people have to do everything I do whilst also caring for someone else. Um, but as now you're pregnant with your third child,
Yeah, yeah.
how you kind of managed that now as a freelancer, like being a parent?
Well, now I do have a partner, so that definitely helps things a ton. And he's also a musician, so he really gets it. And actually, we love working together,
Oh,
which is like really sweet. But it has been very difficult, having especially a very little one. So
mm.
obviously my daughter is almost 12, so she's very like just about self-sufficient. But we've got a nearly 2-year-old, and we tried to teach. Well, we achieved teaching a course at Dartington last summer when he was 6 months old.
Wow.
Then we're actually going to do the same next this coming summer with a 2.5-year-old and a new 6 month old.
Oh my God.
Because we had a big conversation like, should I just stay home in the summer and then I can have the kids and you could do the course? And we thought, no, we really want to work together. We have to
Yeah.
just find a way to make it work, and maybe be more open about,
Mm.
first of all, how hard it is, how rewarding it is, and how you actually make it work on a practical level. And that's part of the PiPA work that's happening, is how can organizations make it possible for people who have caring responsibilities to turn up and do their work.
And the work they want to do as well, and not having to compromise and be like, oh no, we shouldn't both go because what will it mean? It's like there should be things in place to mean that you can both work together and fulfill all that.
Well, it's still an extremely um, unequal society, especially when the mom normally takes a step back
Mm.
and the career goes down. In order for there to be equality, that might mean the men need to take a bit of a step back.
Mm.
When I played that scenario out in my head about not going so I could be home, I felt so sad.
Yeah, yeah,
Like, no, I don't want to feel. I When I was on my own with my daughter, I would just often feel just so left out.
yeah,
There's so many programs I could never go on, and every bit professional work I'm doing or have ever done has been with her, and so like I'm doing it in spite of the odds. Would it have been easier to just get like a law conversion degree or something?
oh my gosh,
I get a little job. I don't know, maybe in the short term, but
yeah.
why is it so hard to do this job? And it's not just exclusive for people who have kids, like it is extremely difficult. There's like, there's the work-life balance. There's very little of that. There's the planning. There's the childcare. There's the often quite low pay or being paid really late. Scarcity. I do think that work definitely has not picked up.
Yeah.
With COVID, and then we have Brexit as an issue, which could be a contributor to the levels of discrimination actually climbing from the survey. It's that much harder to get work that you're definitely not going to complain if you get.
Oh yeah.
If you get work, you just need it so badly. Why would you report anything?
What are you in the ISM hoping that, the next year, what does your campaigning maybe look like? What are the goals and aims for the next sort of year or so?
Well, hopefully we will gather lots of signatures for this open letter, which will give it a lot more impact. Hopefully we'll get some kind of response. We would love to get some timeline from the government as to when these issues will get some proper attention, and keep going for it no matter what.
Absolutely, yeah.
Just relentlessly highlight how precarious the situation is. And it's also working with organizations that have the power to make these changes that will trickle down. So that includes membership organizations having a code of practice, code of conduct. More organizations signing the ISM-MU code of practice that was established in 2018. We've got over 140 organizations that have signed it. And so we need even more stepping up, saying what's actually clearly defining the behaviors that are unacceptable. Because I think a lot of times it's easy to just say, oh, that's discrimination, where what you really need is a very clear index of what types there can be, because there can be so many different types. And it could be that people are doing it and maybe don't realize. Yeah, I do think people are talking about their experiences more. I feel like they have, there's been a lot more progress in the film and television industry since 2017. I don't really think the music has had their proper Me Too movement.
No.
And I wonder what it would take.
Yeah.
For that wall to come down. And it's not just the big stars. I think the thing that we keep thinking about at the ISM is, what about the wedding band? Scratch wedding band that drives hours to Village Hall to make £50 playing for an evening. You have to keep thinking about the majority of musicians and the way that they work, and what happens if an audience member harasses them, or what if two members of the band have an issue? What would you actually do? And so and also I think it's for students finishing their preparing a talk to give to the RNCM Student Union on International Women's Day.
Oh, cool.
Which will be kind of aimed at final year students, or students who are just about to go into the profession, to understand what their rights are. And we'll have the head of legal services there as well. So he'll make it sound very, very smart. So I'll have the ground experience of the different situations you'll get into in your first few years out. And he'll have the things to back it up. But the ISM has got 6 lawyers that work for them. And they take on over 1,600 cases a year on behalf of members, which includes unpaid fees and things like that, but also a lot of workplace discrimination. So the advice is always there. And there's always signposting to organizations that can help if it's, because at the end of the day, it's not all just about the legal thing, about sorting out legally. At the end of the day, you're still there as a person who's experienced some horrible stuff. You've got to pick yourself up again and try and keep going. And how do you do that?
And sort of how long will the impact of that last? Because the impact of your experience on your work, you know, could be, if you don't get it sorted or don't have the adequate help, you know, it could go on for years, feeling trauma or
Yeah,
whatever.
and actually, a big part of my PhD research was about the physiological impact of trauma on performers,
Wow.
about how it can deteriorate. Deteriorate? Is that the right way? I feel
I
like
think
there was too
so.
many
I
R's
think
there.
so.
Deteriorate your self-trust.
Mm.
And that has a really close connection with like performance anxiety, which can be its own issue. But if you also have some triggers for trauma, they can happen at the same time, and your brain doesn't know what to do, and so you go into that fight or flight mode. That obviously can lead into some not very enjoyable performance experience or audition experiences,
Mm.
and then that just erodes your self-belief and ability to keep going, and so you could get a lot of people just ending up just quitting or
Mm.
going to do something else or turning to substances perhaps to
Yeah.
ease that pain. I couldn't stand the sound of people exercising at the gym because it triggered memories for me, and so I made a piece where I had to work out for 18 months with a personal trainer and play the piccolo at the same time
Oh,
to
wow.
to try and work on building up both my body strength, but also that relationship with my instrument and how they were connected. And so the pieces where I exercise while playing the piccolo for 20 minutes in front of the audience, called
Oh my
Picturesize.
God. Exercise. You've put yourself through it, Kathryn.
Yeah, well, I suppose so. But I think that's what I like to do is just focus so intensely on one thing until it gets
Yeah.
ridiculous.
Yeah.
I want to know everything about it. So I really enjoy getting to learn so much about employment law
Yeah.
and all this stuff surrounding discrimination in workplaces.
Thank you so, so much for your time and for sharing your story with us and everything, and for writing this incredible report, which is now available for people to read. And
You can sign up for the campaign. So we've come up
sign
with
up for
a
the campaign.
hashtag dignity2, as in the number 2,
Oh
work,
gosh, so
and keep updated with all the things that we're doing.
awesome. Thank you so, so much, Kathryn.
Pleasure.
It's been lovely to talk to you.
Lovely talking to you as well.
Yay. And to your little
Yay.
doggy.
Woohoo. And Roxy.
She's been so good. She's been so good.